Yatra, which is actually said to be the biggest gathering. So the actual Tithi is tomorrow. So tomorrow the Rath actually will leave the main temple of Sri Jagannath and goes all the way to Gundicha temple. And then there the Rath, actually this whole thing is, the Rath stays for 9 days and then there is a return back to Sri Jagannath temple. So tomorrow is the first day. So the Rath will begin tomorrow. And then on Friday is a festival called Hera Panchami. You know, that is like the 5th day, Panchami. And then I think next week sometime, there's the return of the Rath. You know, so it's a very, very wonderful festival of, I think I see few devotees from Jagannath Puri area. So you know about this wonderful festival. So we will be celebrating Sri Jagannath Rath Yatra here in the temple next Sunday. Okay, so on 25th of June. So please do join us. So from 4 o'clock onwards, we'll have the Rath Yatra procession. So there'll be Aarti, Kirtan, and we are also having a special guest next week. His Grace Kritu Prabhu is actually from India, and he'll be coming here. So he'll speak of the importance of Jagannath Rath Yatra. And after that, we'll have a procession right here on our temple grounds. And then next time's prasadam is also cooked by devotees from Orissa area. So it's going to be a typical Jagannath Puri Mahaprasadam feast next Sunday. So please do join us. It starts at 4 p.m. And also from 2:30 onwards, we'll be needing some help decorating the chariot. So if you'd like to come early, you can help set up the cart, decorate the cart for Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra. And also there is always a seva of cooking in the kitchen. So that cooking would start at noon. Okay. So if you'd like to sponsor any aspect of this festival, the Artik is $108. The flowers for Jagannath Rath Yatra and their lordships is $251. And the Mahaprasadam feast is $301. So if you'd like to sponsor any aspect of the festival next week, you can let me know, or you can always use this kiosk to give your donation. Okay. So thank you so much. So we'll proceed to our next part of our program, which is a talk by His Holiness Bir Krishna Goswami Maharaj. So we request everyone, kindly a little bit come forward. You know. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So good to see everybody. And it's nice Sunday. So as Aditya Narayan Prabhu mentioned, next Sunday we're going to be celebrating the Rath Yatra ceremony here at New Goloka. And today is that actual important day in the Vaishnav calendar, too, in relationship with Rath Yatra, and we're going to be speaking about that. It's called the Gundicha Marjana Festival. So tonight's talk, class, whatever, is going to be based upon the Gundicha Marjana Festival. How about that? And that precedes Rath Yatra, which is actually tomorrow in Jagannath Puri, as Aditya Narayan Prabhu mentioned. So, with that in mind, what we're going to do, instead of chanting Jai Radha Madhava, guess what we're going to chant? Nobody can guess? Yeah, you guessed it. It took about 2 minutes for you to figure that one out. Okay. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra, Jai Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu me. Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo. Nichai go, Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada Jaya Jaya. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paravidakacharya, also Teta, Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagadada Sami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasti Devi Ki Jai, Saveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarni. Somagana Timidanda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chaksuran Meditam Yeda Tasmai Shigadavena Maha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So as I mentioned, we were going to be speaking about the Gundicha Marjana festival. But in order to properly describe this festival, we're going to have to give a genuine or general explanation of who Lord Jagannath is and what the Rath Yatra is. And we're not going to get into the details. We're not going to get into the story of King Indradunya, which I'm sure you're going to hear next week. But we're going to talk about basically what's called ontology. That's a big word. Who Lord Jagannath is and why the Rath Yatra takes place and what does it mean that Lord Jagannath goes to the Gundicha temple. So that's the background for this discussion today. So who is Lord Jagannath? Jagannath. I think you can figure that one out, right? Jagat Nath. For those who don't know any Hindi or Sanskrit or don't know much, Jagat means universe. He's the Lord of the universe. Nath means the Lord, right? Just like every wife should call her husband Nath, right? Do they do that? Any of you ladies, your husband, you call your husband Nath? No, not a single one of you. Okay, so much for that discussion. So Nath means Lord. And the wife should be called Priya by the husband. Any of you men call your wife that? No. One. Yeah, because his wife's name is Krishna Priya. It's a no-brainer. So, anyway, so Jagannath means the Lord of the universe, which is, in English, G-O-D, God. So, what is Jagannath doing in the Rath Yatra? But actually, even though the Rath Yatra takes place originally in Jagannath Puri, that means the village of Lord Jagannath, the original source of the Rath Yatra is in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is the place, for those of you who don't know, where the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the battle was fought between the Pandavas and the Kurus. But this is before the battle was fought, okay? So before the battle was fought, Krishna and the Yadus and the Kurus and all the different families and even the people from Vrindavan came to Kurukshetra. Now, why would they go to Kurukshetra? Anyone have any ideas? Anybody know? Eclipse. It was a solar eclipse. And so Kurukshetra is the holy place. Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta, Yuyutsavaha. It's Dharmic Kshetra. So the residents of Vrindavan for the first time left, and they saw Lord Jagannath, who at that time was known not as Lord Jagannath, he was known as Dwarkanath, or Dwarkadish, or Krishna for short, right? And so they saw him there, and they thought, that's our Krishna. The residents of Vrindavan were thinking, that's our Krishna, who we grew up with, who we danced with, who we coddled in our arms. And now he's dressed as a king? How inauspicious. We want to relate to him, but, you know, just like if you're married, you go to the office and your husband is dressed as the CEO or something, or some big position or whatever. He said, oh, I don't want to be around here. Come home, Charlie. Right? Isn't, you know, come home, you know, the kids are crying. Someone has to take care of the kids, you know. Right? Isn't that what people would naturally think? So in the same way, the residents of Vrindavan were thinking, we can't relate with Krishna this way. I mean, he's grown up, but actually he hasn't grown up because he always looked the same. Krishna always looked like he was 16 years old. And even later on, when it was time for the battle of Kurukshetra, when he was on the earth about 125 years, no gray hair. Even you have gray hair. You know, he's really intelligent, but, you know, he's aging faster than we had hoped. So, no gray hair, none of these wrinkles or anything like that. He looked like beautiful, 16 years of age. So he looked the same. But how he was dressed and surrounded by the royal entourage was a problem for the residents of Vrindavan. So they basically thought, let's bring him back to Vrindavan where we can relate to him. And so this desire or attempt to bring him back to Vrindavan is the significance of the Rath Yatra ceremony, to take Lord Jagannath back to Vrindavan. Okay. So, of course, in the story that actually happened over 5,000 years ago, Krishna didn't go back to Vrindavan at that particular point. But at the same time, Krishna never left Vrindavan. He was there in his what we call a prakrita form, unmanifest form. Krishna is still there in Vrindavan. For those of you who are devotees, you can feel Krishna's presence when you go to Vrindavan or anywhere in the Braj area. You can also feel Dwarkadish's presence when you go to Dwarka. You can feel Krishna's presence when you go to the battle of Kurukshetra. But those who are Brajavasis, they very much appreciate Krishna's presence in Vrindavan. So this Rath Yatra ceremony signifies the attempts of the Vrindavan Vasis to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. So that's really the background behind Rath Yatra. So more of a background behind the ceremony itself. Of course, we know that there was the Snana Yatra. Everybody hears the Snana Yatra when you bathe Lord Jagannath? Okay. So Lord Jagannath, when he's bathed, he apparently gets sick. But that is his trick. Because Lord Jagannath wants to spend time with Rukmini, the goddess of fortune. And, you know, being king is quite busy. You know, you're quite busy when you're the king, right? You don't get a day off. The traditional Vedic kings had to see someone who was complaining, even if it was on a Sunday or what is that, June 10th or something like that, Juneteenth. Anyway, that's a holiday coming up, for those who don't know, or Christmas Day. The king, because they didn't have Christmas in those days. So there's that story about Lord Ramchandra in the Ramayana, that even when Lord Ramchandra was trying to take it easy, a dog came and complained, and he had to talk to the dog. You know, anybody in the citizen, any citizen, anybody in the city, in the kingdom, could complain and come see the king. Sometimes there was a bell in the traditional kingdoms where the person could ring the bell and the king would come, or they bring the person in to see. So that, of course, there's that famous story about the dog. The dog was complaining that a Brahmin was beating him, and the Brahmin had to be punished, and ultimately the Brahmin had to become temple president somewhere. Because that's how the dog got to be a dog. Not the dog, the Brahmin got to be a temple president, because that's how the dog got to be a dog, because in his previous life he was temple president or ashram president somewhere. Of course, in New Goloka, they'll become a deer instead of a dog. So it's an inside joke. So basically, you know, Krishna wanted some QT. What's QT mean? Quality time, right, with the goddess of fortune, you know. Okay, so I'm sick. Don't bother me. You know, I have COVID, so don't bother me. I know people who have gotten COVID without getting COVID, so they can have some quality time, isn't it? I'm coughing. I must have COVID, okay. Really like online work, right? So therefore, Krishna spends this time called the Anavasara with the goddess of fortune. Okay. But there's a problem. When he's with the goddess of fortune, she is an expansion of the residents of Vrindavan. Isn't it? Rukmini is an expansion of the residents of Vrindavan, particularly Chandravali, and if you really get into esoteric stuff. And of course, Chandravali is an expansion of Srimati Radharani. So Krishna actually looks at his wives, and he's seen his girlfriends in their eyes. Don't try that at home. You know, just like. And even worse than that is when Krishna is sleeping at night, he's calling out his girlfriend's names, and his wives are hearing it. That's even more upsetting. Oh, Radharani, Chandravali. His wives are going, oh my God, who did I get married to here, you know? So, it's a problem. So then Krishna really starts to develop intense anxiety insofar as his association with the residents of Vrindavan. And he wants to go to Vrindavan, right? Okay. But obviously he can't ask permission from his wife. My dear wife, can I visit my girlfriends? No. Particularly, some of his wives have a temper to them, like Satyabhama. Satyabhama is a direct expansion of Srimati Radharani, and she has a real temper to her. You know, there's some story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where she goes into her angry room in the palace and starts pounding on the ground, and Krishna comes up to her and says, "Get up. I don't love you anyway." I mean, talk about arguments between husbands and wives. So anyway, Krishna, he cooks up an excuse in his mind. He says, Priya, I'd like to go for a little walk. Okay. So she says, okay, you can take a little break. You know, we've been alone a long time, so, you know, I know you need some fresh air. So he goes for the walk, but the walk is to Vrindavan. And as Aditya Narayan Prabhu mentioned, that walk lasted for 9 days. And there's all sorts of things that happen, such as the attacks. The wife attacks the residents of Vrindavan in order to bring Krishna back after the 5th day, but I'm not going to get into those details. So that's the background. So the story is that the Vrindavan, the replica of Vrindavan near Puri, is in a temple called the Gundicha Temple. Okay? And the Gundicha Temple is where Lord Jagannath goes to for the period of 9 days before he goes back. So what happens in terms of the prior activities in the Gundicha temple before Lord Jagannath goes. And that's called the Gundicha margin, or cleansing of the Gundicha temple. And I'm going to speak about the story, making some reference to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila. If you're really interested in reading this, get a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita from Aditya Narayan Prabhu, who's standing right there, and he has a special discount for you today. And so you can read it. It's the 12th chapter of the Madhya Lila. This Chaitanya Charitamrita. Amrita means what? Does anyone know? Here? Nectar. It's nectar. You read it. It's about Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And he is showing us, or teaching us, the highest philosophical conclusions and the most wonderful, loving exchanges that Krishna has with his associates. So please get a copy of this book. So, and this book is written by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who is a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who heard directly from Raghunath Das Goswami, who was with Lord Chaitanya for a longer period of time than any of the other Goswamis of Vrindavan. So it's really direct information about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And you will be overwhelmed when you read this book. Anyway, so we're going to tell a few stories from this, and then we're going to talk about the spiritual significance insofar as we are concerned. Because right now we're not in Vrindavan, and right now we have Krishna in our heart, but we don't perceive him. And that's a problem. And right now, Krishna is in our heart, watching us do all of our things that are not so pleasing to him, and he's feeling a little uncomfortable about it. Watching us. He's compassionate. He's tolerant. The Upanishads describe there's two birds in a tree. This is a metaphor in comparison to the soul and the super soul, that is Krishna, in our heart. And Krishna's watching the one bird try to enjoy this material world, and he's thinking, when is this bird going to learn his lesson? Hasn't he been kicked enough for so many lifetimes? And we're thinking, what? Punak punaschar vitacharvananam. Let's try again. We're ignoring what Albert Einstein said. What did he say? Definition of an insanity. Does anyone know? What? Expect a different result. That's called chewing the already chewed. It's like, or like when I was young, we had a hamster. You know what a hamster is? And he had a wheel inside his cage. Of course, we didn't keep him in the house. We kept him in the house. The cage was in the house, but he wouldn't run around. And so he wouldn't get anywhere. Just keep running around and around and around. That's called a rat race. Anyway. So there's something in this story that's applicable for us, and I'm going to describe about what that is. So let's tell the story. First of all, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made a request to the associates of the king of Puri that he wanted to wash this temple, the temple of Gundicha, before Lord Jagannath went. And the superintendent of the temple said, okay, we'll give you a facility to do it. However, this is not really fitting for you. You're the Supreme Lord. Why should you be doing menial service? Now, this is a very important point. A devotee of Krishna is a servant and should be willing to do what? Anything the Lord wants. Like you see, Srila Prabhupada, he came to the Western world and he was completely surrendered and dealing with all sorts of craziness, unbelievable craziness in New York. You know, people taking drugs and threatening his life, stealing from him. And at the same time he was serving, he was cooking and cleaning for everybody. Some people were eating 20 chapatis at one sitting. And he rolled them all for a bunch of young ex-hippies. Some of them were drug takers. A few exceptions, of course. Jayananda was not like that. And so Prabhupada took that position. And Lord Chaitanya is showing us what it means to be a devotee. He said, I'm going to clean, and give me all the ingredients to clean, like brooms and pots and everything like that. So the first thing they all did is they cleansed the temple with brooms. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cleansed what we call the Singhasana. That means the sitting place of the deities, that lion asana, Singhasana, like that. And hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleaning. And the whole time they were doing what? Does anyone guess? Chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And even Lord Chaitanya was crying in ecstasy having that service. The devotee should be appreciative of whatever service they get for Krishna, even if it's menial service. As described in some places, he even washed the temple with his tears, like that. Cleansed everything again and again. Lord Chaitanya gathered up all the dust in his own cloth and dumped it outside. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the devotees a competition. He said, I can tell who is cleansed the most by the pile of dust that they put outside. So they were competing with each other. And sometimes if someone wasn't so enthusiastic, Lord Chaitanya would speak in a very sarcastic way. Oh, you have done very nicely. And the person got embarrassed and worked harder and harder and harder. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water to wash the temple with. And about 100 men came forward with many, many different water pots. They went to the different lakes, like the Narendra Sarovar, which is right near the temple in Gundicha. And they filled the pots up, and they thoroughly washed the ceiling, the walls, the sitting place, everything of Lord Jagannath. And they even began to throw the water on the ceiling. Not the ceiling. We're not going to do that here. It would ruin this building if you did that. I mean, that building was made of stone, so you can do that. And so Lord Chaitanya kept cleaning, and they pour water into the hands of Lord Chaitanya. Some of them poured water on his feet. In fact, one particular thing that happened was quite interesting. One of the devotees thinking, I want to get the foot bathing water of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they, in the guise of cleaning, they poured water on his feet, and they kept drinking it. And Lord Chaitanya got very upset. Now, why did he get upset? Because it was the temple of the Lord. Even though he is the Lord, he wanted to set the example that inside Krishna's temple, people should not get their feet bathed, even if one happens to be not the Lord, but even if one happens to be a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mopped everything with his own cloth. Such humble service the Lord performed. And it's described when the water was let out of the temple, it just flowed out like rivers going to the ocean. Amazing, amazing. And everybody, of course, was always chanting the holy name. So they washed everything, the place where the bogu is kept, and so many different pastimes happen. You have to read this chapter to really understand it. See, then afterwards they performed congregational chanting and took prasadam. So that was the festival of Gundicha. So really, what is the significance? And to talk about the significance, I'm going to read, what I'm going to read is a commentary written by Srila Prabhupada within the Chaitanya Charitamrita about the significance of the Gundicha temple cleansing. And then I'll speak a little bit about how it applies to us, because it's going to be apparent after I read this text by Srila Prabhupada. It's a beautiful text, and Prabhupada is quoting from his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world teacher, was personally giving instructions to how one should receive Lord Krishna. the Supreme Personality of Godhead within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart, as prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka. Everybody's heard of the Shikshashtaka? Chaito Darpana Marjanam. That's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 20, text 12. In this age, everyone's heart is especially unclean, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Ridantoksto Yabadrani. So the rest of that verse, which is not here, is Srinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridantoksto Yabadrani Vidunoti Saritsatam. What does that verse say? That when one hears and chants about Krishna, Srinvata Swakata Krishna, that is the most pious act, Punya Shravana Kirtana. That hearing and chanting is the most pious, elevated spiritual activity. Ridyantakshto, that Krishna who is seated in the heart cleanses the dust from that person's heart. Because there is so much dust in our hearts, right? Not your heart, the rest of us, conditioned souls. There's so much dust in our heart. Why is there so much dust? Those are called impressions, samskaras, from many different lifetimes. Like every experience you've had makes an impression and dirties the heart. And that means millions and millions and millions and billions and trillions of different experiences in different lifetimes. Just like all of you obviously have had a childhood. And if you try to understand why you act in a certain way, you can go back to your childhood and you say, did your mother treat you like this? Did your father treat you like that? Oh, now I know why you are the way you are. So the way we are is more than just this lifetime. It's many, many lifetimes. And then our heart is filled with what? Lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, fear. These are called anarthas. And so Prabhupada said in Kali Yuga, trying to clean someone's heart is like trying to clean a piece of what? Anyone know? Coal. Like you take some coal, you put it in your sink and take some Clorox or whatever you want to use, bleach, and you try to clean it. Yuck. Everything gets dark. So what do we do? But that Krishna is in your heart and he does the cleansing. But you got to manifest Krishna in your heart by chanting the holy names. So I'll continue to read. This is such a beautiful purport by Prabhupada. I just was inspired to read it. It's in the same chapter as the Gundicha Marjana story. It's actually a commentary on the Gundicha Marjana story. To wash away all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The first result will be the heart is cleansed. Then he quotes again from the first verse of the Shikshashtaka. And then he also quotes again from 1-17, the verse I actually just quoted. Sri Krishna, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart, the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So you may think, I don't want to have my material enjoyment cleansed from the heart. It's taking away all my fun for me, right? No. The real fun is Bhaja Bhaja Bhai Chaitanya Nitai, Kevalananda Kanda, isn't it? Unlimited happiness. If a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord. Same verse, 1-17 in Bhagavatam. Also get a copy of the Bhagavatam from Aditya Ryan today. These two books, special discount for both books together, both series together. This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he's already seated there. Krishna wants to continue living within the heart. So this is what I pointed out before, that Krishna is just like not too happy in your heart right now. He wants to continue living in your heart. Of course, he will because he's tolerant. And the Lord wants to give direction, but one has to keep his heart as clean as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kept the Gundicha temple. The devotee therefore has to cleanse his heart just as the Lord cleansed the Gundicha temple. In this way, one can be pacified and enriched in devotional service. If the heart is filled with straw, grains of sand, weeds, or dust, this is actually just metaphorical. Or in other words, anyabi lashita purna. It means dirty things. One cannot enthrone the Supreme Personality of Godhead there. You know, we're supposed to be anyabi lashita shunyam, free of those things. And actually, I'll explain how to do that in a second. An easy path. The heart must be cleansed of all material motives brought about through fruitive work. It means desiring, things in this world. Speculative knowledge, desiring liberation. Mystic yoga system means desiring powers. And so many other forms of so-called meditation. The heart must be cleansed without any ulterior motive. That means any other reason, desire. As Srila Rupa Goswami says, here's the verse. Anyabi lashita shunyam jnanakarma navritam. Actually, he doesn't quote the whole thing, but it's anukulyena krishnana shilanam bhakti rutabam. That's the nutshell verse of the Bhakti Rasa Rita Sindhu 1:1:11. And this verse, which I'm going to speak about in a second, I'll give you the definition in a second. In other words, there should not be any external motive. One should not attempt material upliftment, understanding the Supreme by speculative knowledge, fruitive activities, severe austerity, and penance, and so on. All these activities are against the natural growth of spontaneous love. Savai pumsam paral dharma yata bhakti hoksajay haitaki pratyata yatma suprasidate. That's the only thing that really satisfies our hearts. That spontaneous love. Yayatma suprasidate. As soon as these are present in the heart should be understood to be unclean and therefore unfit to serve as Krishna's sitting place. We cannot perceive the Lord's presence in our hearts unless our hearts are cleansed. A material desire is explained as a desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. In modern language, this is called economic development. An inordinate desire for economic development is considered to be like straws and grains of sand within the heart. If one is overly engaged in material activity, the heart will always remain disturbed. As stated by Narottama Das Thakur, samsara vishanale divanishi yadrele judaite nakoina upai. So he goes on. I don't think I'm going to read this whole purport. It's actually quite lengthy, and some of it is a little repetitive. And it's basically making the same point again and again and again. I'll just finish up the purport. Actually, it's quite long. Okay, so just at the end. The Lord was personally, everyone who spreads the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts a similar responsibility that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embarked on in cleansing the Gundicha temple. The Lord was personally chastising and praising individuals in the course of chanting, and those who were engaged as acharyas must learn from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to train devotees by personal example. The Lord was very pleased with those who could cleanse the temple by taking out undesirable things accumulated therein. This is called the Narta Nivritti, cleansing the heart of all unwanted things. Thus, the cleansing of the Gundicha Marjana was conducted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to let us know how the heart should be cleansed and soothed to receive Lord Krishna and enable him to sit within the heart without disturbance. And Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So then, getting back to the point I made about the coal, the piece of coal, that's a pretty hard thing, because if you really introspect a little bit, there's a lot of self-centered motivation and desire for this, desire for that. Our desires are adandagopir vishatam tamishra, are actually unlimited, basically unlimited in this world. And basically all of us are thinking, as Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita in the chapter Divine and Demoniac Natures, Ishwaroham aham bogi siroham balavan sukhi, right? I am the center. I'm perfect, power, happy. These are all due to the divisions of the false ego, right? Everybody knows what the false ego. What are the two divisions of the false ego? I and mine. These are the two divisions. It's called ahankara, two divisions. So all these anarthas, let's get back to the source of the anarthas. You know, you could try to deal with the anarthas individually. Impossible. Lust, anger, greed, illusion. Okay, I'm not going to want anything in this world anymore. I will not want anything in this world again. I will never want anything in this world again. I will never do it again. Never again. Never again. Okay. Doesn't work. Because they try to do a don't, the more you want to do it. Isn't it? I won't do not. I will not overeat. I will not overeat. I will not overeat. I will not overeat. Where's the food? So I will not hate you. I will not hate anybody. I will not hate anybody. So you're just bringing it more into the forefront of your consciousness. And the process that generally people who are not Krishna conscious follow, neti, 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 you know, I'm not this body, I'm not that. But what the heck are you? So really that process doesn't work. You know, of course, we're talking about chanting the holy names, but not just chanting the holy names in any which way. There's a methodology for chanting the holy names. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka has given us, in addition to this Gundi Jamarjana story, he's given us the methodology for chanting so that our hearts will be cleansed and we can get rid of the anarthas. And that methodology is elaborated on in the Shikshashtaka prayers, right? Beginning with Chaito Darpana Marjana, which establishes the Siddhanta, or what we call Sambandha, of the Shiksha, of the holy names. But ultimately, let's go to the last of the Shikshashtaka verses, because that's the highest platform, where all the anarthas are gone. Actually, even in not the last, but the sixth verse of the Shikshashtaka, where one is concentrating on bhava, you know, Nayana Masru Gala, yeah. When will that day come when tears will come from my eyes like that? Anyway, so even that verse indicates the stage of bhava. Bhava is also a stage that's pretty high, right? It's pretty high. But it's not a stage when you're absolutely free of this material world, because the anarthas can come back. I'll give you a practical example. There's Bart Maharaj. Everyone's heard of Bart Maharaj? He adopted a baby deer. I'm not going to get into the whole story. And he got attached to the baby deer and had to become a deer, even though he was on the platform of bhava. I was always wondering, yesterday Krishna answered that question for me. I was always wondering how someone so high could become attached just to a baby deer. So I was thinking, Krishna, how is it possible? So yesterday I was sitting out here on the property, and a cute little baby deer goes by. You know, just think how strong Krishna's illusory energy is. Here I am, a sannyasi, you know, renounced, okay, Guru Maharaj, everything. So a cute baby deer goes by, and I go, wow. I said, maybe we should open up a petting zoo here. Because I'm thinking to myself, petting the deer, not anyone else. So basically, even that's not a secure platform or safe platform. So one has to come to the highest platform of saying, Krishna, I'm your servant, and you can do anything you want. So that requires a change of self-identification. So getting back to the verse by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Navartam Anukuyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktirutamam. What he says, that Krishna consciousness is devoid, first he gives a negative definition, that is devoid of desire for these sort of things, what we call gross things, things you can touch, tangible, empirical things. And it's devoid of desire for, subtle profit, adoration, distinctions, desire for liberation, desire for power, all the things mentioned in the purport. But here is the key. He says, as they say, the kicker, the key, the kicker, whatever you call it. He says, Anukulyena Krishnanushilam Bhaktirutamam. He says, to be serving Krishna, not only serving Krishna, but active in service to Krishna, because many of us are dreaming of serving Krishna. One day I will serve Krishna. It's like Prabhupada gave the example of this man who was going to become a millionaire by selling pots and, making clay pots and making another one, doubling his income and quadrupling his income, 2 times 2 times 4 times 2, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And so Prabhupada said that he eventually kicked over the one pot he had. So many of us dream of the future. But so this verse says we have to be active in serving Krishna. But the real point is to do it with devotion. Now, what does devotion mean? See, bhakti is a very powerful force. Love is a very powerful force. Even we've experienced in this world, not we, you all have, how the reflection of bhakti, which in this world is called love. As they say, love makes the world go round. You ever heard that before? No. He's an innocent guy. So, love stories, Bollywood movies, like that. So the reflection of that makes people so absorbed that they forget about everything else, right? For some time. Because it's like, sorry, this is a sannyas class. It's like a barrage. Anyway, so going on with that, going forward. So anyway, but that love really helps the heart focus. It helps the person focus. So what does that love entail? I mean, what is the consciousness of someone who loves Krishna? It entails changing the self-identification. Instead of thinking yourself, it's actually quite an easy thing. People asked me the other day, we were talking about sannyas, how did you maintain your sannyas? I've been a sannyas for so many years, can't even remember when I was anything else. So I said, it's just a question. It's not a struggle. If you just change your identification. Gopi Bharta, Padakamala Dasa Dasa, Dasana Dasa. I'm not a sannyasi. I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. I'm not an American. I'm not Indian. I'm not any of these things. I am just Krishna's servant and whatever Krishna wants me to do. And that's really the last verse of the Shikshashtaka. Krishna, you couldn't crush me by your embrace. Leave me brokenhearted by not being present before me. You're completely free to do anything and everything. And you remain my worshipful Lord unconditionally. So if one thinks like that, all these other things come into place, and you really basically don't have to worry too much about lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, all these anarthas and dirty things, because you've replaced them. And you're having a higher taste by serving Krishna. And that's really what Prabhupada came to teach us. And that's why so many people changed their lifestyle in the West and became, great devotees, because of that higher taste, that love. Higher taste is actually love, not simply the symptoms of ecstasy described in the 6th verse of the Shikshashtaka. That's preliminary. But the higher taste is actually the symptom of just being absolutely in love with Krishna and identifying yourself as belonging to Krishna and Krishna as belonging to you. And that's what Lord Chaitanya was teaching us with this Shikshashtaka. With this Gundicha Marjana story. That he was teaching us his identification because he's Krishna in the mood of Radharani. Because I'm simply a servant. That's why, even though I'm a sannyasi, Lord Chaitanya was a sannyasi, even though I'm the guide and guru of all these devotees, I'm getting down on my hands and knees. I'm a servant of Krishna. So that's the key to becoming Krishna conscious. So that's Gundicha Marjana. So any quick questions? I hope Krishna doesn't take me up on that. So, sometimes I say, I've identified myself as a servant. Then Krishna says, okay, we'll see how far that identification goes, Here's your test, Maharaji. So, so anybody have any questions or comments before? And then we like I said, next week is Rath Yatra. It's very exciting. Unfortunately, or whatever, I won't be here. I'm going to be going to Europe tomorrow to do preaching because it's sannyasi's business to travel and preach. And we'll be back on the 9th of July to be with everyone again. So if there's no questions or comments, yes. That's a funny story because it involves me. I tried to figure that out. I went to the door of the Gundicha temple because in Jagannath Puri they're very ritualistic. You have to be born in India. Even if you're from India and you move overseas, you can't tell them that to get into the temple. So I went to the door of the temple. I wanted to see what was happening when Lord Jagannath wasn't there. And they said, you can't come in. I said, how much will it cost for me to come in? I've been in India. I know how things work, So I said, what's the cost? And they said, whatever it was, like 200 rupees. And I said, if I give it to you, will you let me in the temple? And they said, we'll tell you the story of Lord Jagannath. I said, let me in the temple. And they said, no, you can't come in the temple. So I never was able to figure that one out. I'm sure they have other deities in there. Maybe, what's it? You've been in the temple? What's in the temple? Many deities. All around the temple, there's many deities. So there are other deities in the temple, but they're waiting for Lord Jagannath to come. The temple represents Vrindavan. Another point is, when Lord Jagannath goes to the Gundicha for those 9 days, he changes his mood. He becomes like a Brajabasi or like Krishna in Vrindavan again. He becomes very playful. And Lord Chaitanya and his associates, they become like little kids when they go to the Rath Yatra. During the Rath Yatra festival, they go to Gundicha with Lord Jagannath. They start playing in the water and having water fights with each other. Even old people, of course, people like Dvaitacharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Lord Nityananda, they start splashing each other and fighting each other in the water like little kids, because that's the mood in Vrindavan. And that's the most satisfying mood, to be in the mood in Vrindavan, where you just become young again and you can just play eternally with Krishna, isn't it? And that's the goal, to actually play eternally with Krishna, isn't it? But you have to be a servant. Not that Krishna's meant to play with me and satisfy me. Not that I want to go to Vrindavan so Krishna can make me happy. I want to go to Vrindavan to actually please Krishna. And that's love. Love is the only thing that satisfies the heart. Other things, whatever else you have, even liberation doesn't satisfy the heart. Eternally, the only thing is just like that loving exchange, giving to Krishna, and Krishna loves you back too. It's just like a reciprocation. Krishna loves you, you love him. All eternity, for eternity, it's just like, I love you, you love me, I love you, you love me. How long can you say that to anyone in this world? Do you love me? I'll think about it. I tolerate you, Isn't that love? No, but the love between Krishna and his devotees is just like always, anandam buddhi vardhanam. It's always increasing. I mean, how many times have I read this Chaitanya Charitamrita? And it's always increasing. How many books are you going to read that the nectar increases each time? I mean, maybe before I came to Krishna, I read Gone with the Wind, and after that it was gone. Right? How many novels, have I read? How many movies have I seen in this lifetime? Innumerable movies. How many times can you see the same movie? Did you ever try that, Adwaita? Seen the same movie? Which movie? Oh, Ramayan. Okay, that's good. He tricked me. So, so how many times can you keep doing the same thing? It's just like, you know, you're with your family. Oh, let's go on vacation. Can't wait till we get back home. Oh my God. You know, so Boga Tiaga, Chapalasuka, you know, all those nice things. So been there, seen it, done it, right? That's this world. So anyway, so I just want to have eternal happiness. I've been doing the same thing for, I don't know how many years it is. 50, more than 50 years, obviously. And it gets better every day. I'm happy. Body gets older, still happy. How many of you can say that? Your body gets older. Your body is 70-something years old. I'm blissful. That's hard. So anyway, by Prabhupada's mercy, I can say that. Okay, on that happy note, we should end because there's prasadam and other things to do tonight. And thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much, Maharaj, for the wonderful class on Good Nicha Marjanam. Like really going deep into the entire story, showing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood, and so many wonderful points which are like practical and also philosophical. So such a wonderful class. So let's again thank His Holiness Bir Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Haribo! And also we would like to wish Maharaj a very safe travel. We'll miss Maharaj Association and we are looking forward to again have Maharaj Association in around 3 weeks' time.